Imagine for a second that you run a massive global accounting firm.
Okay, stressful start, but I'm with you.
Right. So yesterday, you had this highly complex corporate compliance audit, and it took your team of junior associates, I mean, we're talking 3 full weeks of grueling, round-the-clock labor to finish it.
Which is pretty standard for that industry, yeah.
Exactly. But today, that exact same audit takes 3 minutes.
Wow, just 3 minutes.
Yeah. So do you pop champagne and celebrate because your firm is now incredibly efficient, or do you lock the boardroom doors and just panic?
Oh, you definitely panic.
Right, because you just completely destroyed the traditional billable hour that pays everybody's salary.
It is the ultimate double-edged sword for the modern knowledge worker right now.
It really is.
We've spent, the last few years totally mesmerized by the shiny public-facing applications of AI, the chat bots, the instant image generators, all those consumer
The
toys.
fun stuff.
Right, the fun stuff. But that architectural novelty phase, that is definitively over.
Which brings us to today. Welcome to today's deep dive. Because today, Thursday, May 28th, 2026, we're looking past the shiny glass of the skyline, and we are going straight into the walls of the global economy.
Taking a look at the plumbing.
Exactly. The source we are unpacking today is Aaron Rose's latest, the Tech-Reader AI Digest. And if there is one core mission for our discussion today, it's understanding how AI is no longer just like an app on your phone. It is actively rewiring the underlying infrastructure of the entire world.
And when you start ripping out and replacing the underlying plumbing of global business, of international geopolitics and military defense, everything else sitting on top of that infrastructure is forced to radically shift.
Totally. So to show you exactly how this rewiring is happening, we've put together a roadmap through the most critical signals in today's digest.
Sounds good.
First, we're going to explore that exact scenario I just mentioned, how a massive corporate alliance is quietly executing a calculated hit on the traditional billable hour.
A massive hit.
Huge. Then we are going to look at what happens when that same hyper-efficient automation gets applied to the military, which, as you can imagine, is sparking a very intense structural debate over who gets to make life or death decisions on a battlefield.
Yeah, the stakes get infinitely higher there.
Right. And finally, we're going to break down a $20 billion geopolitical chess move, one that's designed specifically to shatter the United States' absolute monopoly on artificial intelligence.
So we're hitting 3 completely different domains today: enterprise finance, military doctrine, and global sovereignty.
But they are all colliding with the exact same technological reality. So let's jump straight into the corporate world with our first story from the digest. Anthropic and KPMG just formalized a staggering global strategic alliance.
Yeah, and if you're listening to this and you work in professional services, you need to pay very close attention to the scale of what is happening here.
The scale is wild. KPMG is taking Anthropic's Claude model and embedding it into the core client delivery infrastructure for every single one of their 276,000 employees across 138 different countries.
It's honestly hard to overstate the gravity of that move. KPMG is, they're one of the big 4 professional services networks.
Right.
These are the institutions that physically maintain the tax, legal, and financial advisory infrastructure for the largest enterprises on Earth. When they fundamentally alter how their employees do the work, they alter how global business functions. Period.
And they aren't just giving their accountants like a login to a chatbot on a web browser. They are building Claude into what they call the KPMG Digital Gateway.
Which runs on Microsoft Azure.
Yes, built on Microsoft Azure. This is their central nervous system. It's where all their proprietary tax data, internal tools, and massive client workloads actually live. They are integrating specific tools like Claude Cowork and a Managed Agents API straight into the bloodstream of the firm.
Right. And didn't the digest mention something about legacy systems?
Oh, yeah. They're launching something called KPMG Blaze. It basically uses Claude code to go in and aggressively modernize old legacy IT systems. But, and this is the kicker, there is one specific metric Aaron Rose highlighted in the source that is just mind-bending.
Yes. The compliance agent benchmark.
Yes. KPMG cited a concrete benchmark for a regulatory compliance agent they built. And, think about what a compliance agent does. It reads through tens of thousands of pages of dense, constantly changing global tax codes.
Super tedious work.
Right, and it cross-references all of that with the client's legacy corporate structure and flags violations. That specific task used to take weeks of human labor from a small army of junior associates.
But inside this new integrated platform,
It takes minutes.
that is just, I mean, literally collapsing weeks of human cognition into minutes of machine compute.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the basic economics here are breaking my brain. If a big four firm suddenly accomplishes in 3 minutes what used to take 3 weeks, how on earth do they make money?
That is the existential question.
Right. Doesn't this completely obliterate the traditional billable hour that the entire consulting, legal, and accounting world is built on? I mean, it's like a taxi driver suddenly being handed a teleportation device.
That's a great way to look at it.
It is objectively fantastic for the passenger. You arrive at your destination instantly. But how does the driver charge for the ride? You certainly can't charge by the minute anymore.
What's fascinating here is exactly what Aaron Rose points out in his analysis. This is no longer a story about an impressive technological capability. It is a story about a forced business model evolution.
A forced evolution. I like that.
Yeah, professional services firms are realizing that human time is no longer a viable metric for value. They are moving away from billing hours entirely and moving toward productized AI-driven workflows.
Wait, so instead of sending a client an invoice that says, we spent 200 associate hours manually auditing your international compliance.
Right.
They just say, we are selling you the guaranteed outcome of this compliance audit for a flat premium fee.
They have to. I mean, when your delivery speed compresses from weeks to minutes, your pricing model has to decouple from time.
That makes sense.
You start charging for access to your proprietary data platform, and you charge for the final guaranteed outcome. Because, think about it, a billable hour has a physical limit. A human can only work so many hours in a day. But an AI-driven workflow, that scales infinitely.
And this transition isn't isolated to just the accountants, is it? Because the digest has a whole section of quick hits that proves this shift is happening across the entire tech economy.
Oh, absolutely.
The billable hour is being replaced by something entirely different.
Right. If you look at the broader landscape Rose lays out, the pattern is undeniable. The entire digital economy is shifting from time spent to tokens processed.
And for anyone who doesn't know, a token is basically the fundamental unit of data an AI model reads or generates. Think of it as like a piece of a word.
Exactly. And we are seeing tokens become the new unit of economic value. Just look at GitHub Copilot and the popular code editor VS Code. Starting June 1st, which is just 4 days from now, they're officially switching to token-based billing.
Yeah, the source notes that Copilot Pro subscribers will pay $10 a month, which gets them 1,000 AI credits at 1 cent per credit. So developers are literally buying raw cognitive horsepower by the penny.
And then look at what OpenAI is doing.
Yeah.
According to the Digest, back on May 11th, they launched a massive initiative called DeployCo.
With a crazy amount of funding, right?
Yeah, backed by over $4 billion from 19 different partners. And what is DeployCo actually doing? They're embedding what they call forward deployed engineers directly inside client organizations.
Which means what, practically speaking?
It means OpenAI isn't just selling a software subscription from afar anymore. They are physically sending their own engineers into Fortune 500 companies to rip out the old legacy systems and manually lay down the AI plumbing. Yeah, they are wiring these massive enterprises to consume OpenAI's tokens, and they are doing it as fast as possible ahead of their S1 listing target in September.
And S1 being the massive regulatory document a company files when they're preparing to go public on the stock market. So OpenAI is essentially building token factories.
Pretty much.
They are making sure the corporate world is heavily addicted to their specific infrastructure right before they IPO. It really is complete transition of the white-collar economy from human hours to machine compute.
Exactly. But this brings us to a massive logical collision.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. The corporate world can safely hand over its complex decisions to an AI because the worst-case scenario of an accounting error is, a financial penalty.
Sure.
But what happens when that exact same hyper-efficient, frictionless automation is applied to a system where the worst-case scenario is lethal force?
Which brings us directly to the battlefield. And we really need to look at a very intense structural and philosophical tension outlined in the source material regarding the military.
And the tension itself is what's critical to examine here, because the friction between technological capability and ethical responsibility is quickly becoming a defining conflict of our era.
Let's lay out the facts. Today, Vice President J.D. Vance delivered the commencement address to 931 new officers at the U.S. Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs.
Right.
And the dominant theme of his address to these new military leaders was artificial intelligence. He fully acknowledged that AI will inevitably transform modern warfare, but he drew an incredibly firm doctrinal line.
What did he say exactly?
I'm going to quote him directly. He told the graduates, "Use technology to make you better, but never submit to it."
That is a very specific, calculated phrasing.
He actually went further. He said, "If the warfare of the future is to live up to the moral values of our ancestors, decisions over life and death must be made by humans and not machines." He even anchored this doctrine by invoking Pope Leo IV's recent encyclical Magnifica Humanitas, which argues that moral culpability simply cannot be outsourced to algorithms.
So we have the administration laying down a profound philosophical requirement here. A human must remain in the loop for lethal military action.
Right. And I understand the philosophy, I really do. But practically speaking, how does that doctrine actually survive contact with the physics of modern warfare?
What do you mean?
I mean, think about the mechanics of this. If you put a human in the loop, you are inherently introducing human latency. To me, it sounds like we are demanding human stockbrokers on the floor of the exchange yelling buy and sell orders,
While fully knowing our adversaries are using fiber optic algorithms executing trades in microseconds.
The algorithmic trading analogy is spot on. If one side requires an officer to stare at a screen, interpret data, consult the rules of engagement, and physically press a button, a process that takes, what, maybe 5 seconds?
At least.
Right. And the other side deploys an autonomous drone swarm that identifies a target and executes in 5 milliseconds. The human doesn't just lose the battle. They don't even realize the engagement started until they are already defeated.
This raises an important question, and it's the exact systemic contradiction Aaron Rose highlights in the digest.
Yeah.
Now, just to be completely clear for everyone listening, we are not taking a political side here. We are strictly maintaining neutrality and just analyzing the structural tension that Rose mapped out.
Absolutely. We are just looking at the facts presented in the source.
Right. So you have the vice president standing in front of 900 future military officers, establishing a very clear, ethically grounded doctrine. Humans must hit the brakes. But as Rose notes, just 8 days prior to this speech, this exact same administration killed a voluntary AI safety review process.
Wait, really?
Yeah, strictly because of pushback from the tech industry.
Hold on. So they canceled a basic safety review for commercial tech companies, but they are demanding strict human oversight on the battlefield.
It highlights a deeply fractured reality. The Pentagon knows the physics of what you just described with the algorithmic trading analogy. They're actively advancing AI deployment. Defense contractors are rapidly integrating autonomous systems because speed is survival.
Right.
So the technological trajectory of the military is hurtling toward absolute automation, while the stated moral doctrine of the leadership is demanding a human speed limit.
The structural disconnect there is staggering. You literally cannot reconcile the speed of compute with the latency of human morality.
You really can't. And that profound anxiety, this deep systemic fear over who actually controls the AI, whose moral values it aligns with, and who gets to see the data it processes, that fear isn't isolated to the military.
No, it's everywhere.
It's spilling heavily into the global economy, which is triggering a massive movement by foreign nations to completely bypass American AI dominance.
And this brings us to a huge $20 billion geopolitical flex. Let's look at the third major story today. Cohere, which is a highly prominent Canadian enterprise AI firm, is acquiring Germany's Aleph Alpha.
Right.
Publicly, they are framing this as a merger of equals. But if you look at the raw financial mechanics in the digest, Cohere's shareholders are walking away with about 90% of the combined entity.
So structurally, it is an acquisition. Narratively, it is a merger. And practically, it is heavily backed by both the Canadian and German governments.
But look at who is actually funding this. Schwarz Group, which, for those who don't know, is the massive parent company of European grocery giants like Lidl and Kaufland, they are dumping a $600 million Series E investment into this deal.
That's massive.
Yeah. They are going to deploy the resulting AI through Schwarz Group's own Stackit cloud platform. The combined company will maintain dual headquarters in Toronto and Germany, and LF Alpha's existing government contracts carry over. And the entire banner they are flying this under is the phrase sovereign AI.
Sovereign AI being the principle that enterprises, and particularly foreign governments, can retain total, uncompromised control over their own data without ever having to route it through server infrastructure controlled by the United States.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because I have to play devil's advocate for a second. We've heard the buzzword sovereign AI thrown around at tech conferences for like over a year now. Is this just a clever marketing rebrand?
How so?
Well, let's be honest. LF Alpha is what the industry calls a subscale foundation model. They simply struggled to keep up commercially with the massive multi-billion-dollar compute costs required to train frontier models like those from OpenAI or Anthropic. Are they just slapping the word sovereign on their company as an excuse for the fact that they couldn't compete on pure performance?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, your skepticism is totally logical. The number of independent labs that can actually afford a $100 million training run is shrinking rapidly.
Exactly.
Consolidation was financially inevitable. LF Alpha desperately needed a lifeline, and Cohere needed a concrete foothold in the European market.
So it was a marriage of convenience.
Yes, but here is why it's brilliant. By merging and wrapping the new entity in this heavily funded, government-backed sovereign AI narrative, they are offering a feature that absolutely no American tech giant can offer right now. Think about it from the perspective of a European government procurement team or a massive German bank. If they used an American model, there is always the lingering structural fear of U.S. data privacy laws, foreign surveillance, or sudden regulatory shifts in Washington.
Right, because if your data touches a server in Virginia, you are subject to U.S. jurisdiction.
Precisely. Cohere and Aleph Alpha can now walk into a boardroom in Berlin or Paris and give an absolute ironclad guarantee. Your data stays on our sovereign servers, and it never touches American infrastructure. That transforms sovereign AI from a lofty political buzzword into a highly funded G7-backed commercial moat.
Oh, wow. So it's not about having the smartest chatbot, it's about having the most secure vault.
Exactly.
And you really have to view this in the context of the broader global competition. There's a staggering statistic buried in the Digest's Quick Hits section regarding China. Right now, Chinese AI models like DeepSeek and Alibaba's Qwen are pulling 61% of global OpenRouter developer API traffic.
And we should clarify what OpenRouter is, because that 61% number is terrifying for Silicon Valley.
Oh, yeah, totally.
OpenRouter is essentially a massive switchboard where independent software developers go to plug their apps into different AI models. Watching its traffic is like watching what the smartest, most agile builders in the world are choosing to use on any given day.
And 61% of them are actively choosing Chinese models. The United States' monopoly on artificial intelligence is facing highly funded, state-backed challenges from every single direction.
Every direction.
China is completely dominating the independent developer traffic because their models are cheap and highly capable, and now an alliance between Canada and Germany is locking down the highly regulated European enterprise sector. The walls really are closing in on the U.S. labs.
They absolutely are.
So what does this all mean for the rest of the landscape right now? We've covered the big structural shifts, but let's do a rapid-fire status check from the rest of the digest just to make sure you, the listener, have the full picture of the ecosystem today.
Let's run through it. We can look at this in three distinct buckets: the hardware builders, the consumer events, and the quiet giants.
Let's start with the builders. On the hardware infrastructure side, NVIDIA's highly anticipated Vera Rubin chip ramp is still firmly set for Q3. No delays there.
Right.
And Cerebra's, the company making those massive wafer-scale chips, they're seeing their stock stabilize after its recent debut, so the physical compute is still flowing.
Then you have the consumer-facing events. Apple's WWDC is fast approaching, and everyone in the industry is bracing for major AI integration announcements across their devices.
Definitely keeping an eye on that.
Also, Elon Musk's xAI has their SpaceX S1 roadshow coming up on June 4th. That remains on schedule as they prepare for the public markets.
But the third bucket might be the most telling: the quiet giants. A huge portion of the landscape is surprisingly silent today. We have zero new announcements from major players like Replit, Perplexity, Meta, Palantir, Reflection AI, Alama, or Thinking Machines Lab.
And Google is also fundamentally quiet today, though their recent I/O recap sessions are still pulling massive traffic on demand.
Right.
And over at Microsoft, that internal pilot cancellation for Claude Code remains standing news.
And why does the silence matter? Because for the last 2 years, we've been used to a new, mind-blowing AI product dropping every single Tuesday. The silence paints a picture of an industry taking a collective deep breath. They aren't resting. They are actively pouring the concrete for these massive structural foundations we've been talking about.
It absolutely does. And if we synthesize everything we've unpacked from Aaron Rose's digest today, the conclusion is pretty clear. The AI ecosystem has officially matured past the hype phase.
Totally.
It is becoming the unglamorous, largely invisible, but utterly essential plumbing of our world. It is rewriting the economic realities of global tax compliance by obliterating the billable hour. It is becoming the focal point of military doctrine, forcing us to question the mathematics of human morality in warfare. And it is driving a $20 billion proxy battle for geopolitical data sovereignty.
The glass and steel of the skyscraper are already built. We are living in the walls now, watching the pipes get connected. And that leaves me with one final, slightly terrifying thought for you to mull over as you go about your week.
Let's hear it.
If we are truly entering this era of sovereign AI, where different countries and alliances are building completely separate, walled-off AI infrastructures to protect their own data and encode their own unique moral values, will we eventually see the rise of AI data havens?
Ooh, that's an interesting concept.
Think about it. Just like massive corporations use offshore tax havens today to avoid financial regulation, will the tech companies of the future deliberately route their AI processing to massive server farms in countries with the most lenient autonomous laws?
It's highly likely.
Right. If one country requires strict human oversight and a tiny island nation allows completely unrestricted, hyperspeed AI processing, where do you think the most aggressive companies will set up shop? If the plumbing of the world is being completely rebuilt from scratch, someone is always going to look for a leak.
That is a fascinating and, frankly, scary thing to think about.
Well, thank you so much for joining us as we unpack the infrastructure of tomorrow. Stay curious, keep looking closely at the systems built around you, and remember to always question the world you live in.